The Buffalo Sabres. Same story, new year. The Sabres enter this season with some optimism, but with a playoff drought that stretches 13 years back to 2011, the pressure is mounting for this organization. Last year, the team finished with a record of 39, 37, and 6 for a total of 84 points. It was the second time they were above 500 in these drought years, but it still was not good enough for the team to get into the postseason. With just about every frustration being revealed last year, there were few positives to take away from the season, especially since they regressed from their 2022-23 campaign. The Sabres have a lot of work to do this season if they wish to finally break out of this drought. Under new but former Sabres head coach Lindy Ruff, the team will have to find their identity quickly in a wildly competitive Atlantic division. In a league where parity reigns supreme, the Sabres will have to break free from the past, but will they rise to the occasion is the real question. Well, today, let's break down why this season is crucial for Buffalo, focusing on key players, management, coaching, and critical analytics to see if this will be the season where the Sabres end their 13-year-long playoff drought. So something you guys are going to see me do a lot of this year is when I'm not well versed in a topic or a team is bring on some outside guests who can give me a better perspective on what's actually happening. And today I've brought in two Buffalo Sabres fans who are also their own podcasters, and that's Zach and Preston from the Checking From Behind podcast. These two make some great content. I'm going to leave their links in the description below. So after this video, make sure you guys go check out all of their stuff. And before we start this video, about 90% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel who watch these videos. So what are we doing, guys? We're trying to reach 20,000 by the end of the year. So make sure you like this one and subscribe to the channel now for more hockey content like this. And without further ado, let's head over to my interview with Zach and Preston to talk about the Buffalo Sabres. Guys, how you feeling about the Sabres season so far? Some of the changes, just all that good stuff.
The Sabres, it's hard to trust them. They've been playing better lately, but this three-game winning streak also comes off the back of a three-game losing streak. So I think inconsistency has been one of the best words you could describe how this team's been playing this year. And until I see more consistency and them winning more frequently, it's going to be hard for me to trust this team.
Yeah, I'm kind of with that. They started off the season slow, got out of the hole, dug it back, and then had to come back out of the hole. So I want to see them, win 3 games is nice, but win, even if they lose their next game, win another 2 or 3 and start to build some momentum going to past Thanksgiving and into the holidays.
With these 3 wins, what do you guys think is the biggest thing that's attributed to the success that this team is having?
I think goaltending has been a lot more consistent the last few games. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has looked very good. I was kind of shocked with the way they kind of manhandled the Rangers last Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Shesterkin didn't have a great game, but the Sabres were playing really good team defense, and they were getting timely saves out of Luukkonen when they needed them. And if this team wants to win, they got to show up defensively. I think their scoring has been kind of rebounding back to where it was a couple years ago. When they missed the playoffs by 1 point, Tagethompson has been awesome to start the season. And I think the scoring is starting to work its way back after, especially the slow start at the beginning of the year where they just seemingly couldn't score. Their power plays looked a lot better, I think. But goaltending, I think, has made a big difference, and now the Sabres are starting to trust Luukkonen a little bit more.
I think goaltending is number 1, and then number 2 is Tagethompson and JJ Peterka are playing absolutely lights out. Tagethompson right now is on pace for another 50 goals, which I know it's on pace, but it's still a great bounce back season from him. Peterka right now is looking to take another step in. The only gripe that I have with this team is the second line hasn't been able to get going, but with Zach Benson back the last 3 games, they have won 3 straight. Dylan Cousins and Quinn look better, so maybe Benson coming back into the lineup is all this team really needed to.
Well, I think a big thing too has been Samuelsson and Matthias Samuelsson and Henri Jokiharju have sat the last 3 games after kind of being atrocious. I mean, I'm over Jokiharju. I wouldn't be mad if the Sabres just decided to move on from him and trade him, get what you can for him. Samuelson's a bit of a tougher situation because he is under contract, I think, for 5 or 4 more years after this. So that might be a little bit of a harder player to move on. But I mean, I'm glad Lindy's holding the players accountable. And even if you're an assistant captain like Samuelsson is, and if you're not playing the hockey you want to play, you're going to sit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I wanted to bring up. You mentioned their power play. So a big thing for the Sabres in 2022-23, I believe, was their power play success and the team just overall being better offensively. If you take a look at their numbers this season, just their special teams in general, they're 26 in the lead with their power play, 15.6%, which is atrocious. Penalty kill, kind of the same thing. They're middle of the pack, 77.6% kill rate. And then their penalties, they're taking the fourth most in the league right now, which for me, when you're hiring someone like Lindy Ruff, the idea was to get this team to be more disciplined, more consistent, and play up to their potential, which in some cases we have seen with guys like Tage Thompson. He's clearly brought out that goal scoring in him again, but the younger guys are not producing at the level I think some Sabres fans would hope. So how do you think this team goes about getting some more scoring throughout their lineup rather than just their top line? Because it seems like eventually that might dry up, and then where are they going to get any production from if that's not happening?
Yeah, I think Zach already mentioned this a little bit, specifically with that second line. I think they really need to find some solid wingers to pair with Dylan Cousins, because he hasn't been really looked like himself the last year and a half. The scoring's kind of dried up for him, and I think Zach Benson coming back helps him. He comes back and immediately that second line has 2 goals, but Jack Quinn has been horrific. I really been pretty happy with the production they've gotten out of that third line with Ryan McLeod, which I think is. A lot of people were flaming the Sabres in the summer for giving up a top prospect in Matt Savoy for a third line center in Ryan McLeod, but I think he's been everything the Sabres asked for. They're getting some decent depth scoring from him. Jason Zucker has been another really decent player that was brought in during the offseason. The fourth line, they're not really scoring, but I think they're just trying to kind of be harder to play against. But I think the biggest thing is that first line's clicking right now with Tuck, Tage, and Peterka. That second line needs to be more consistent. And Cousins, I think he's had chances. I think once he gets some better wingers on his sides, I think you'll start seeing his production go up a little bit. But that's the second line is their biggest issue right now.
I'm kind of with that. Like you brought up Dylan Cousins, who is the X factor for this team. If he gets going, this team will take off. And right now, he's second on the team in expected goals, which is 5.7. And right now, he has, I believe, 1 goal.
He has 2 goals.
He has two goals. So at the end of the day, he's getting unlucky. We saw at the start of the season, he was hitting posts. He had a wide open net from the opponent's blue line and hit the post. That's how snake bitten he's been. And you look at this team, 5-on-5, they're middle of the pack. Their Corsi percentage right now is 11th in the league. But 5-on-5, they've been a pretty decent team, special teams that's killed them. And when your penalty kill isn't that great, you have to say out of the box. And we've seen it time and time again where there's games where they absolutely kill their opponent 5-on-5, but the second their power play comes onto the ice or penalty kill, they'll lose the game quite literally because of that. They've had a couple games where it's been like that. They're on the PK 4 times. They allow 3 goals out of 4 opportunities, and they lose by a goal. It's like in those situations, you can't do that.
Yeah, exactly what I was mentioning earlier, right? You think Lindy Ruff's going to come in and be more disciplined, but these guys are actually playing way worse when it comes to taking penalty minutes. You mentioned Jason Zucker. Yeah, he's been great, but I think he's leading the team in penalty minutes with 21 or something like that. Yeah. Just very bad penalties, inopportune chances for the other team. And when it comes to their penalty kill, they're supposed to have one of the best younger blue lines. Is this their defense to blame? Is this Lindy Ruff? Who is responsible for the lapses that this team is having? Because we can talk about Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power being such great potential young blue liners, but I'm not seeing enough from Owen Power this year. I know he has some points, but it's not really points that look good if you're watching the games. He might get them, but they're not really impactful in my opinion. So who's really to blame for the lack of production on the penalty kill, the power play, and who needs to step up the most for this team to kind of turn those things around?
I think it's a little bit of the system they play in their penalty kill. Their forwards are very, very aggressive at pressuring the defensemen when they're pressuring the points, and you have to win those battles at the point. And you have to get those loose pucks, and they're not winning those battles. And like you said, Dahlin, Power, even I'll throw Byram in there. They're not really known for their defensive play. They're, Dahlin and Power were number 1 overall picks in their draft. Byram was 4th overall in his draft. They have a lot of offensive upside, which we've been seeing. Dahlin's been looking better, and Byram's been looking really good. But they don't really... there was a play a few weeks ago when I was at the game. The Sabres were on a penalty kill. They were playing the Islanders, and the Islanders had the puck behind the net, and Samuelson was taking his guy behind the net. And for some reason, Dahlin just followed him back there and left a guy right open in front of the net. That, to me, is a mental lapse. Because, you stay on your guy. There's he's not scoring there. But if you leave a guy wide open in front of the net, I don't care who it is, they're going to score more likely than not. So they need to be more disciplined and, staying with their guys. And, when you have really aggressive forwards on a penalty kill, like, yeah, you might get some shorthanded opportunities, but if a team sees through that and you're going to there's teams that have really, really great power plays, they're going to make you pay, and that's been the Sabres' issue right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with that. Like, Alex Talk right now is top 5 in the league in overall defensive forwards. And his penalty kill aggressiveness is great, but sometimes I'm not going to completely kill him for his aggressiveness because it's just a system and he's good at it. But you get a team, let's say, I don't know, Toronto has a lot of talent. Granted, Austin Matthews is an IR right now, but even with or without him, they still have a ton of talent. And they'll be able to move the puck past him, get past Tuck. Now Tuck's caught in the neutral zone. All of a sudden it's a 4-on-3 or a 5-on-3, whatever. And I think it's just mental things at this point. The Sabres have all the skill in the world. Elliot Friedman has wrote multiple times that the Sabres have the talent. They just need to put it together, and we all want to see it. It's just a matter of I just don't know what's going on with this team. Why they're not good.
No, that's a perfect way to summarize, man. I mean, it's been like this for years. You feel like they're taking a step in the right direction, and then all of a sudden you're seeing these little lapses that just bring them back down to earth, and it makes you question whether or not this team, as currently constructed, is even going to be able to make the postseason with some of the talent that they have. So I guess what's the biggest thing this team needs right now? Like, if they were to, I guess, be around the wild card spot at the trade deadline, do you think that they're even going to be at that position at the trade deadline with how competitive the division's been this year?
I think they have a chance. I mean, if you look at the Eastern Conference as a whole, there's kind of a lot of teams like lumped in. You know, looking at the standings now, like they're tied with Tampa Bay for the last wild card spot. I know it's early, but you know, there's a lot of teams that Detroit, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, the Islanders, the Sabres, the Lightning, that are all kind of in that wild card conversation. But they need to play more discipline. Like, that's been their Achilles heel. Like you mentioned, like their special teams is horrible. Their power play has been better, but to start the year, I think it was like for 6-7 games they didn't score a power play goal, and your penalty kill hasn't been great either. And they need to stay out of the box and make the most out of their opportunities on the power play. I think they've been much better 5-on-5 up and down the board. They have a bad game here and there, but the special teams has been what killed them. They just need to stay mentally tough and stick to assignment and play the system.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to agree with you. I'm going to go with something different, and they just need better defensive play on their blue line too. You're getting great play from Bowen Byram, which has been excellent, like Preston mentioned. Rasmus Dahlin has been great. And even Owen Power has had his stretches where he's looked good. He's kind of struggling right now. But if you can add one more top 4 defenseman and also stay out of the box, I think you'll be okay. And this power play has too much talent, especially on the first unit, to be at a 15% clip at the moment.
Yeah, and I agree. The big thing that always made me scratch my head a little bit was why the Sabres traded for Byram in the first place. It's because I always felt like they needed more of a defensive-minded guy. And I know Samuelson's supposed to be that guy, and he just hasn't really stepped up. But it seems like they have too many players playing the exact same brand of hockey, which is just getting in the way of things. And you mentioned earlier, their goaltending has stepped up this year, which is what makes it even more disappointing, is because you have Pekka Luukkonen playing like a beast, even though Levi has been a little bit slower this year. It almost feels like they're wasting this good play from Pekka Luukkonen in some games just because they're not currently structured properly. So I think maybe that's their biggest need, just getting that more defensive-minded top 4 defenseman and hoping that maybe some of the depth in their offense can step up and they can kind of clean up the mistakes, which is something that I truly believe falls on Lindy Ruff, especially with them bringing him in for that specific thing. So yeah, it seems like they actually have a chance this year too with their division. You talked about teams like Tampa, Boston, Toronto all kind of having a rough start. So do you see them being able to separate from the other teams in this division, or are we seeing another year where potentially the Sabres miss and then now we're talking about a really big drastic change for this organization?
I don't see this team being a playoff team. Just honestly, like, I'd love for them to make the playoffs. It's been 13 years since they've made the playoffs, but I don't think they have the depth. I don't think they have the defensive structure to be able to win games that matter. I'd love for them to prove me wrong, but as of right now, I'm not seeing it consistently enough.
I don't think they're a playoff team. I would, like Preston said, I would love for them to be a playoff team. But this next stretch of games coming up with the next month or so is going to be huge because they go on a Western Coast road trip. But then you have the Canadiens, Blues, Flyers, Kings, Ducks, Sharks, all winnable games. And then if you can get, let's say, win 3 out of every 4 games there, because then you go into a stretch where you play the Wild, Canucks, Avalanche, Jets, Utah, Red Wings, Rangers, and even Capitals and Maple Leafs. So, like, you go into the stretch where you need to win games, so then you have some cushion when you go up against those top contenders in the league. So if you lose a few straight, you have something to back off and be like, you know what, we're comfortable, we're okay, we can get through this. But if you go through and you're 500 against these teams that you should realistically beat, there's going to be a lot of problems. And if the Sabres don't make the playoffs this season, I don't know where you go from here, because you already tried to rebuild 3 times in the last 13 years and it hasn't gone well.
So that's kind of was going to be my last question for you guys. The Sabres, worst case scenario, miss the playoffs again. And let's say this time it's not by simply a point or two like they have the past couple of years. What changes? What needs to change? Who do you move on from? What do you do? Do you make a drastic change with your GM after failing to rebuild almost twice, it feels like now? Do you go ahead and fire Lindy Ruff? Do you give him more time? Who's to really blame for all of the mistakes they've made?
I mean, I would say Kevin Adams' job is on the line this season. I think hiring Lindy Ruff is like his emergency last option. Is like, you know, I'm done. Like, if I don't get this team a winner, Kevin Adams used to be an assistant coach for the Sabres, so he knows Lindy Ruff very well. And in his opinion, he thinks if anyone could get this team to play more disciplined and play more cohesive hockey, it's him. And honestly, I think if the Sabres, like you said, miss the playoffs by like a good amount of points and they're not even in the conversation, you know, come trade deadline time, I think they're both gone, honestly. Because, you know, Lindy Ruff, you know what you're getting out of Lindy Ruff. He's been a coach for forever, you know. And Kevin Adams, you know, I think he's done a good job drafting. But the problem is, like, it doesn't matter how well you draft if you're not winning.
No, agreed, yeah. And do you think any players would be moved? Do you think it's about time to mix up the core? I mean, we've been seeing this for a little while now. It's still relatively new. There's a lot of young guys on this team. I didn't have them in the playoffs in the first place, so it's not like a crazy overreaction for me. Like, I don't think they should move on from a lot of their players, but just to kind of shake things up, because clearly it just feels like they're not gelling well together.
Yeah, that's tough, because they have a lot of, like, they've identified a lot of their core players and they've extended most of them. So, like, you have Dahlin starting his 8-year contract, Power on a 7-year deal. You know, Tage and Cousins are on big contracts, so it might be tough to, you know, completely shake things up. I obviously think they would move on from Byram at that point, because you have Dahlin, Power, and Byram, which are all left-handed offensive defensemen. You don't need 3 of those on a team.
Yep.
It's a nice to have if you're getting great defensive play. But if you're not winning, you don't need 3 defensemen that all kind of play the same style of hockey.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Byram could. I know the Sabres have gotten calls about Bowen Byram within the last couple weeks about what his price would be if the Sabres are interested in kind of shipping him off for more assets. But let's say Byram plays some of the best hockey of his career this season. Not saying he's going to, but let's say he plays some really good hockey. At the deadline, if the Sabres are completely out of it, instead of paying him this offseason, maybe ship him off for some assets, somebody that can fit in the blue line. Maybe, I don't know, somebody in the top 9, for example. Like, I think that could be an option too. But again, we'll get there when we get there, because it is only like 15 games into the season.
Yeah, sounds good, boys. Well, one other thing I want to do with you guys, just to kind of talk about the league in general. Which team has been the most fun for you guys this year? Who surprised you the most? And which player are you guys rooting for the most this year?
I'll let Zach go first.
All right. I already got mine. I'm tied for 2, okay? But the one that comes to the top of my mind are the Minnesota Wild and Kirill Kaprizov.
I knew you were going to say that.
I knew it. I knew it.
I think right now Kirill Kaprizov is earning himself a huge contract. The Minnesota Wild are proving me right. I don't want to run laps, but, I mean, they're 10-2-2 for 22 points. Kaprizov leads the NHL in points currently, and the second team, Winnipeg, I think the best start in NHL history, so they've been a surprise to me too, even though I thought they were a contender. Just winning the first 14 out of your first 15 games is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, Hellebuck's numbers are insane. He's looking to go back-to-back with that Vezina.
Yeah, I say for me, I'm probably going to say the Capitals. I think they've been really surprising to me. Dylan Strome has been playing on another level to start the season right now. 14 games, 22 points, 18 assists, and Ovi's got 10 goals already, which, you know, he had a really slow start last year, and Ovi is looking like he might break Gretzky's record this year. And I think the Capitals have, like, done a really good job in the offseason reloading. I didn't think they'd be this good this right away, but they're looking like they might be a playoff contender.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking at that Metro. There might be a few more teams coming out of the Metro this year than the Atlantic, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that because that's going to really impact the Sabres this year, depending on how many teams are able to turn it around. Maybe the Islanders, Penguins, who knows what's going to happen there. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think about the Buffalo Sabres in general. Do you guys agree that maybe their season is turning around? Or do you think that things are going to go back to the worst? Who's to blame for some of their lapses? Make sure you guys comment all that good stuff. We can discuss it later on. But yeah, big shout out to Zach and Preston for coming on. I'm going to leave the links to their podcast in the description. Do you guys want to shout out anything for your channels on here before I let you guys go?
I'll leave that with Zach.
Yeah, so you can find us checking from behind on all socials, so Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and we also release episodes every single Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you guys find your favorite podcasts.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate it, guys. Have a good rest of your night, all right?
You too.
Right,
Thank you,
man.
Bye. Again, big shout out to Zach and Preston for joining me on this episode. Let me know what you guys think about the Buffalo Sabres and everything we discussed in this video. And if you like this format of me bringing in some outside people to help me out with my commentary. Thank you guys as always for watching. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. I will see you guys in the next one.